Hi friends, welcome back to the Clemson Navs reading through Romans. My name is Tori and I'm a junior at Clemson, and I'm going to be sharing a couple of highlights from Romans 11. So in this passage, Paul covers a lot of ground. He talks about the Jews and the Gentiles and how God brought salvation to them and all people, and so there's a lot of great stuff in here, and so I'd highly recommend that you read the whole thing, but I'm just going to share a couple of things that stood out to me. The first one is about how God extended grace to the Jews, and he brought salvation to them through grace. Paul writes in verses 5 and 6, "So too at the present time there is a remnant, chosen by grace. But if it is by grace, it is no longer on the basis of works. Otherwise, grace would no longer be grace." And I just love how Paul makes his point about salvation being on the basis of grace super clear. He makes it crystal clear that it's not about works. It's not about anything I could do to win God's favor or get to heaven or me being better than anyone else. And it's all about the grace that God has extended to us. I just love how he words this by saying, but if it is by grace, meaning if salvation is by grace, it is no longer on the basis of works. Otherwise, grace would no longer be grace. I just love how clear he makes it. And it just gives me so much confidence that my salvation is based on God's grace. And the next part that I wanted to look at with you guys is verse 18. So in this part of the chapter, Paul is painting this picture about the people of God. He shows it kind of like an olive tree in that the Jews and the Gentiles, the people of God, are branches coming out of the tree, and then God is the root, so God is the one who's sustaining the branches. And so in verse 18, Paul writes, "Do not be arrogant toward the branches. If you are, remember it is not you who support the root, but the root that supports you." And that stood out to me a lot because it's kind of a warning against pride, and that that I'm not to be arrogant to any of the other people of God. And it stood out to me because I feel like sometimes, or a lot of times really, in Bible study or in different settings, I feel like my opinion needs to be heard. I really need to make myself clear because my opinion is important. How I see things needs to be shared. But, and that could be really prideful because I think that my way is so much better than anyone else's way. But this verse was kind of like a reality check for me that I should not be arrogant towards the other branches or the other people of God, and that I'm not the one who's sustaining God. God is the one who's supporting me, and so the focus should be on him, and we're to humble ourselves before him. And so it was just, I love how Paul used this analogy of the branches and the root to just give this warning against pride and a reminder about how God is the one who's supporting us and sustaining us through everything. The last thing that I kind of wanted to look at was how Paul ends the chapter. So throughout the chapter, I was kind of feeling overwhelmed because Paul covers all this ground talking about the Jews and the Gentiles and salvation, and there's just so much covered, and I just felt like Paul had all this wisdom to share, and he had all this experience because he's preaching and writing to these churches, to Jews and Gentiles alike, and I was like, how do I compete with that? Like, Paul has so much to share, and he's so great, but I was humbled by the way Paul ended it. He just brought it back to how great God is and how big God is. So I'm just going to read from verse 33 to the end. Paul writes, "Oh, the depth of the riches and wisdom and knowledge of God! How unsearchable are his judgments and how inscrutable are his ways! For who has known the mind of God, or who has been his counselor, or who has given a gift to him that he might be repaid? For from him and through him and to him are all things. To him be glory forever. Amen." And that ending just really reminded me that God is so big that even someone like Paul can't wrap his mind around it. The riches and wisdom and knowledge of God is just immeasurable. And so my prayer and hope for myself and anyone else who's reading this passage is that we'll continually be reminded of how great God is, and how unsearchable his ways are and his judgments, and how it's he's just so much bigger than anything that we could imagine. And so that thought has been kind of on the forefront of my mind recently, and I just thought I'd share it with you guys. And that's really all I had today. So thank you guys for watching, and I hope you have a good rest of the day. Bye.